To walk through the streets of Pyongyang is to find yourself in a living gallery. Where the West has advertisements plastered over every available surface, Korea displays murals, paintings, posters, and slogans. More than mere decoration, these works of art convey ideas, history, culture, and ideology. They are a living embodiment of Korean society, reminders of the link between the modern socialist nation and the revolution that forged it. In this video, we'll explore the DPRK's murals, dissecting the meaning and symbolism behind each one to uncover the messages hidden beneath the paint. We'll look at 5 case studies, covering a schoolchildren's palace, a station on the Pyongyang Metro, the Liberation War Museum, Korea's premier film studio, and a model farm. Distinct in setting, but unified in purpose, these murals use a common visual language to express the values of a shared society. In this video, rather than interpret these murals from the perspective of a foreigner, I'll focus on the meanings they convey within Korean society, explaining the symbolism and what it reflects in the culture of the DPRK. This video is not about judging or debating the ideas these images convey, but about understanding how those ideas are expressed through colour, composition, and symbolism. So, what are murals? In the DPRK, murals are a form of public art that serve not only to decorate their surroundings, but to communicate powerful ideological messages. They appear in all shapes and sizes across the country, some depicting real historical events, others using symbolism to represent broader ideas. But their purpose is far more than aesthetic. These murals are designed to instill revolutionary spirit, to educate the viewer, and to remind them of the guiding principles of Korean socialism. So, let's begin our first case study where many young Koreans begin their journey, in education. Located on the facade of the Mangyongdae Schoolchildren's Palace is this mural, a bright, energetic depiction of Korean youth cheering enthusiastically. For context, the Schoolchildren's Palace at Mangyongdae is one of the largest in the country and part of a tradition once common across the socialist world. These grand palaces host extracurricular activities for children, offering music, sports, dance, language clubs, and much more. Many children come here after the regular school day, so it's natural that a mural here would centre on young people. There are a few key aspects of this image that stand out. First, the background. These children are standing in front of Lake Cheong, or Heaven Lake, which sits in the caldera of Mount Paektu, the highest peak on the Korean peninsula and one of the country's most sacred sites. Paektu holds layered significance. It is the legendary birthplace of Korea's first king, was a base of operations for anti-Japanese revolutionaries, and the official birthplace of the General Kim Jong-il. Its inclusion in the mural roots the children in a lineage of tradition, struggle, and national pride. Of the 11 students depicted, 10 wear red neckties, a symbol of the Korean Children's Union. The Korean Children's Union, or Choson-Sonyeondan, is a youth organisation linked to the Workers' Party of Korea, open to children aged 6 to 15. Admittance into the Union is marked by large public ceremonies, often on significant holidays, where children are presented with their red neckties, a rite of passage into socialist civic life. At the back of the image, a student holds the flag of the Union. This includes the Union's emblem, a red flame, symbolic of the Juche ideology, a red star, a universal symbol of socialism, and a stylized book in the colours of the national flag, upon which are emblazoned the words "항상 준비," always ready. And above it, 사회주의 조국을 위하여 항상 준비하자. Let's always be ready for the socialist fatherland. Interestingly, the flag in this mural differs from the standard Union flag. Where the name of the Korean Children's Union is usually written, this version includes some additional text, and what looks like the number 5. This likely refers to a specific unit or delegation, suggesting this group of kids might be part of a larger regional school visit to Mount Pektu. 2 of the boys are wearing military-style uniforms, indicating their membership of the Young Pioneers, the uniformed wing of the Korean Children's Union, somewhat akin to foreign cadet organisations. The mixture of dress, casual, formal and uniformed, reflects the broader inclusivity of the Union as a whole. Although not included in this mural, you can easily spot members of the Korean Children's Union, beyond the red neckties, by their ubiquitous raised salute. This is a distinct gesture used by the Children's Union, setting them apart from their older counterparts in the Socialist Patriotic Youth League. This mural is more than idealised imagery. It's a scene that many Korean children can relate to. Organised visits to Mount Pektu on school or unit trips are all part of the lived experience of growing up in the DPRK. So most children will either have lived this exact experience in real life, or will do so in the near future. A true example of how art and life don't merely reflect each other, but reinforce one another. From the heights of Mount Pektu, we now descend, literally, into one of the country's most striking ideological spaces, the Pyongyang Metro. The stations of the Pyongyang Metro are highly decorative, punctuated with striking murals and mosaics, depicting everything from agricultural workers and industrial scenes to calming images of symbolic places like Mount Pektu, Pyongyang, and Lake Samji. We're going to focus on one mural, which sits on the wall of Ponghwa Station. Ponghwayok, which literally means torch or beacon station, reminiscent of the symbolic flame of the Juche idea, has a striking image at one end of the platform. There is plenty of symbolism on display here, both obvious and more subtle. In the centre of the image stands a young President Kim Il-sung, depicted during the early years of the country's founding, likely sometime between 1945 and 1948, when the country was undergoing transition from Japanese occupation to Socialist Republic. The president is surrounded by 4 figures, each representative of a distinct group. The man in brown is wearing a socialist-style worker's uniform and is holding a magazine called Kuroja, or Worker, which launched on the 25th of October 1946. He represents the urban working classes, liberated from quasi-feudalism under Japanese rule. Behind him stands a figure in a burgundy suit, reading Nodong Shinmun, a newspaper launched in 1945 and still the country's most widely circulated national paper. His attire of a suit and tie, twinned with grey hair, implies he is an older intellectual, another important and distinct class in the Korean Revolution. On the other side, we see a woman in traditional Korean dress, known as Choson-op. She likely represents both women in Korea, as well as a bridge between the nation's traditions, through her older style clothes, and the modern socialist revolution, through her holding a red book, likely symbolising the written works of the President Kim Il-sung, considered a key foundation of the Korean Revolution. Behind her stands a soldier of the Korean People's Revolutionary Army. Distinct from the modern Korean People's Army, the KPRA was the modern military's predecessor, formed to fight against the Japanese occupation. These four figures, alongside the president, stand beneath the emblem of the Workers' Party of Korea, depicting a hammer, a sickle, and a calligraphy brush. These three symbols represent the three distinct classes of the revolution: the worker, the peasant, and the intellectual. Behind the central figures is a crowd of people holding banners, flags, and slogans. These figures are celebrating the liberation of the country and the formation of a new socialist republic. We can also see a diversity of individuals, from industrial workers and military figures to young children and university students. The crowd are holding banners saying 조선노동당 창립대회 만세, long live the founding convention of the Workers' Party of Korea, 우리의 용명한領導者 Kim Il-sung 장군 만세, long live our brilliant leader General Kim Il-sung, and 우리 인민의 모든 승리의 조진자이며 고무자인 조선노동당 만세, long live the Workers' Party of Korea, the promoter and encourager of all victories of our people. Being held aloft by the crowd are a series of flags. From left to right, we have the flag of the Socialist Women's Union of Korea, the red flags of the Workers' Party of Korea, the original flag of the Korean Children's Union, used between 1946 and 1958, the original flag of the Socialist Patriotic Youth League, known at the time as 민주정령동맹, or Democratic Youth League of Korea, hence the abbreviated name Minjong appears on the flag. The flag of the Workers' Party of North Korea, a precursor to the modern Workers' Party, which was formed by the merger of this older party and the Workers' Party of South Korea. The flag of the Choson Nongmin Dongmeng, the Korean Farmers Union, later to become the Choson Nongop Guroja Dongmeng, or Korean Agricultural Workers Union, and then repeats of the Children's Union and Youth League flags. The aim of the mural is to symbolise the broad sections of society involved in the founding of Socialist Korea during the 1940s, represented by the diversity of outfits, professions, and the many flags of youth groups, unions, and party-affiliated organisations. At the centre, Kim Il-sung raises his hand beneath the glowing emblem of the Workers' Party as a unifying, welcoming figure, surrounded by a people in lockstep with a shared historical mission. This mural, like the station that houses it, is much more than infrastructure. It's a shrine to revolutionary unity, a space where commuters are reminded daily that socialism in Korea was not built by individuals, but by the disciplined, ideologically aligned efforts of a collective nation in lockstep behind the leader. While the mural at Ponghwa Station celebrates the unity that laid the foundation of the Republic, this next piece transports us a few years forward in Korea's revolutionary story, the Korean War. At the museum dedicated to the Korean War, public art takes on a more solemn, commemorative role, symbolising and honouring the sacrifices that defended that foundation and ensured its survival. In the main entrance hall of the victorious Fatherland Liberation War Museum, the Korean term for the Korean War, we find this mural. Similar to the previous, but with a distinctly more military theme. At the centre, once again, stands the President Kim Il-sung, wearing the white military tunic of a marshal and the Hero of the Republic medal. Behind him stand a crowd of people, a mixture of both military and civilian. Amidst the crowd, we see all branches of the Korean People's Army represented, from the ground forces in their ubiquitous camouflage tunics and the Navy in their white uniforms, to the Air Force pilot in his flight suit and the tank commander with his distinct headgear. In the centre, we see two children, a symbol of the future of Korea, which the armed forces behind are fighting to protect. We can see both are members of the Korean Children's Union by the red neckties, and the boy is a young pioneer, which we can see from his uniform. In the periphery of the main crowd, we see civil figures, a heavy industry worker in his blue overalls, a government or local official in his suit and tie, a technical worker in his protective gear, a countryside farm girl in traditional Choson-op, and even a figure in a brown uniform, likely a revolutionary fighter, to show continuity between the anti-Japanese war and the Fatherland Liberation War. This collection of people, both military and civilian, commemorates the service of the armed forces, as well as the everyday people who rallied behind the war effort during the Korean conflict. Similar to the previous mural in the Pyongyang Metro, it evokes the idea that the people are united behind a single cause, in this case, victory. Behind the main crowd, we see units of the Korean People's Army marching together in lockstep, all looking in the direction of the leader. Above the units, we see flags of the Korean People's Army being held aloft. This variant of flag was used between 1948 and 1961 to represent the Korean People's Army as a whole, and depicts the same colour pattern as the national flag, with a golden emblem emblazoned on the front, along with the words "Cho선의 독립과 인민을 위하여," or "For the independence of the fatherland and the people." In the background, we can see balloons holding up revolutionary slogans, saying "Kim Il-sung 원수님 만세," "Long live Marshal Kim Il-sung," "Choson 혁명 만세," "Long live the Korean Revolution," "위대한 소령 김일성 동지의 주체 사상 만세," "Long live the Juche ideology of the great leader Kim Il-sung," and "Choson 노동당 만세," "Long live the Workers' Party of Korea," all flanked by images of victorious battle scenes of the Korean War in the far background, showing celebrating soldiers holding weapons and flags aloft amidst typical Korean geography of mountains and forests. This mural is more than a depiction of military victory. It's also a celebration of unity, not just of soldiers, but of citizens, workers, scientists, and children, all marching together behind their leader. Positioned within the halls of a war museum, this mural doesn't dwell on suffering. It transforms sacrifice into triumph, and hardship into harmony. In doing so, it reinforces a central tenet of Korean revolutionary art, that the people are at their strongest when they move forward as one. Now, from the military front to the cultural front. Our next mural takes us from politics and military to arts and culture. Situated on the grounds of the Choson Yesul-Yonghwa Twalyeongso, or Korean Art Film Studio in Pyongyang, this next case study represents the Korean Revolution in a more abstract light, through the lens of cinema. For context, the Korean Art Film Studio, colloquially known as the Pyongyang Film Studio, was founded in the nation's capital in 1947, originally as the National Film Studio. It was the location for the DPRK's first feature film in 1949, and has since gone on to be the heart of the Korean film industry. As a result, the mural we're looking at is filled with references, not only to Korean culture, history, and ideology, but to some of the nation's favourite movies. Immediately, we can see the difference between this mural and our other examples. Rather than focusing on one central image, the composition is more a montage of images, although still centred around a cluster of characters. We'll start, however, by looking at these three images, almost looking as if they're positioned in the clouds above the rest of the scene. These motifs are references to the DPRK's revolutionary operas, considered to be some of the country's most important artistic works. On the left, we see a Korean hero bound by his Japanese captors. This is an early scene from the opera Sea of Blood, which tells the story of a Korean family being oppressed by Japanese landlords and security forces during the occupation. This image depicts the early scene when the protagonist's husband is captured by the Japanese military and executed. In the centre, we see the protagonist from perhaps the DPRK's most famous revolutionary opera, The Flower Girl, depicted by Hong Yong-hee, who played the character in the massively popular movie version in 1972. In fact, the film was so popular, the image even appeared on the 1992 series 1-1 banknote. On the right, another scene from the Sea of Blood, as we see the protagonist, Sun-yo, armed with a pistol, symbolising her fight back against the Japanese oppressors. These images are depicted at such a large scale on the mural, as they can be considered some of the country's most significant artistic and cinematic works. So it follows that they hold a prominent place both in national culture and in the history of the studio. In the centre of the mural, we see a cluster of 5 people, likely film producers and other related individuals. The central figure holds up the works of Kim Il-sung, whilst the other 2 members are holding green books. These are copies of a book by the General Kim Jong-il, focusing on film production, called On the Art of Cinema. Published in 1973, this treatise is considered the most authoritative work on movie production in the DPRK, and has become a guiding document in how the country produces movies. The other 2 members of the central group hold paintbrushes and a handheld motion picture camera, symbolic of the Korean arts industry in general and filmmaking in particular. The meaning and symbolism of this central motif is backed up by the 5 large red flags in the background, with the largest reading Juche Chokmunye Sasang, Juche Literary Thought, and the other 4 reading Dolgyokdae, Shock Troop, Jinwidae, Guard Unit, Gunwidae, Close Guard, Gyolsadae, Death-Defying Unit. Though these terms traditionally refer to military units, here they're applied symbolically to artists, filmmakers, and writers. These military terms are repurposed to elevate the role of cultural workers, presenting them not as passive creators, but as active ideological fighters on the cultural front. Jinwidae suggests the artists are the loyal guards of the revolution, protecting its ideological integrity. Gunwidae positions them as an elite vanguard, close to the core of the party and its leadership. Gyolsadae implies they are prepared to sacrifice everything, comfort, safety, even their lives, for the advancement of Juche-oriented literature and art. Across the rest of the mural, we see a chronological timeline of Korean history, showing filmmaking developing from the days of liberation until the present day. Beginning on the far left, we see the liberation of Korea. Local people holding banners celebrating the end of Japanese occupation and the return of traditional Korean culture. Behind them all, the distinctive main building of Kim Il-sung University. Opened in 1946, this university remains one of the most prestigious in the country. In this context, it's symbolic of education leading to culture, and culture leading to modern socialism. In front of the celebrating locals, we see a man and a woman with an old film camera, symbolic of the first age of filmmaking in the early days of the studio. Continuing on, we see the Korean War, with soldiers celebrating beneath the national flag, one of which is filming the events of the conflict on a handheld camera. The right-hand side is filled with symbolism. From left to right, some of the most prominent references include the Moranbong Theatre, opened in 1946 in central Pyongyang's Moranbong Park, city construction and heavy industry, representing the Cholima movement to rebuild and industrialize the country after the Korean War, the Cholima statue, both a symbol of the Cholima movement and would also famously become one of the opening logos used by Chosun Yonghwa, the Korean film production company. The People's Palace of Culture in Pyongyang, opened in 1974, a building with the date 8th of the 12th, 1964. This references a speech given on the 8th of December 1964 entitled 문학 예술의 주체화를 위하여, or for the Juche orientation of literature and art. This speech was given to a gathering of cultural officials and artistic representatives to encourage the use of the arts to support the Korean Revolution. And finally, 3 large red flags, with the slogan 백두산 장작단의 밀솜씨, the fine craftsmanship of the Paektusan Creative Group, 만수대 정신, the Mansudae spirit, and 속도전, campaign of speed. These are in reference to 2 of the DPRK's most prestigious artistic institutions, the Paektusan Creative Group, who are a film production company, and the Mansudae Art Studio, who produce paintings, statues, sculptures, and manage all manner of artistic endeavours. The Campaign of Speed refers to working with ideological conviction, collective unity, and loyalty to the party. From left to right, this mural tells the story of Korean art not as a reflection of life, but as a force that shapes it, showing film and art as integral to the story of the Korean nation, and a key part of the revolution which has shaped socialist Korea today. It begins with the blood-soaked roots of resistance, a young man facing death, a gun raised against colonial oppression. It moves through the ideological awakening of the 1960s, marked by Kim Il-sung's call for Juche-oriented art, and arrives in the present, where writers, filmmakers, technicians and performers continue the revolution with cameras, books and microphones in hand. This is not a mural merely about artists, but about struggle, and those entrusted with keeping the flame of revolution alive through culture. In Korea, art is not made for galleries or private pleasure, it's made for the people, for the nation, and for the future. In our final mural, we move to the countryside. Here, the tools of revolution are not rifles or cameras, but sheaves of grain, spades and tractors. This mural is located at the Chongsan-ri cooperative farm in South Pyongyang province, just outside Pyongyang. At first glance, the scene appears to be a simple image. A group of farmers, men and women, young and old, seated around the figure of the President Kim Il-sung. This is a classic example of Hyonji Jido, on-the-spot guidance, where the leadership visits local sites to provide practical and ideological direction. But with context, this is not just a symbolic gathering. It's a visualization of a real historical moment. In early 1960, Kim Il-sung visited this very farm, and from that visit emerged what became known as the Chongsan-ri method, a new model of leadership built not on top-down command, but immersive participation. Rather than issuing orders from behind a desk, officials were urged to work alongside the people, to listen, observe, and lead by example. The mural captures this spirit perfectly. The leader, not raised above the people, but seated among them. There is no podium, no microphone, just conversation, eye contact, and shared understanding. This rural setting is no ideological afterthought. The mural shows us that the farm is a central front in the revolution. On the left, we see mechanization, a nod to the 1964 Theses on the Socialist Rural Question of our country, which called for the transformation of agriculture through ideological, cultural, and above all, technological development. In the background, tractors roll across the fields, and 3 flags, green, red, and blue, fly in the wind. Such flags are commonly seen in the countryside, displayed alongside slogans to encourage farm workers as they begin their day. In this mural, we see not just a depiction of a leader, but of a method, a moment, and a movement. The revolution, it reminds us, is just as present in a ploughed field as it is on a factory floor. Through the hustle and bustle of downtown Pyongyang to the calm ambiance of a tractor yard at sunrise, murals like these do more than fill blank walls. They serve to inspire, to guide, and to remind. From schools and subways to studios, museums and farms, each one tells us a story of who the people are, where they've come from, and what they're working towards. We've seen how education, history, war, industry, and culture all find visual expression through brushstrokes and mosaics. We've seen how a single mural can encapsulate a method, a memory, or a message. And in every case, one thing remains clear. In the DPRK, art is not passive. It's active, it's purposeful, it's revolutionary. These murals are not just images, they're ideological landscapes, guiding the viewer not only through space, but through the historical, and cultural terrain of Korean socialism.